Hello and welcome to this episode on Geeks First. Today, we're going to be talking about Flesh and Blood, how to choose a hero and a class. Specifically we're going to talk about Silver Age, which is going to be the new format that's coming out in 2026. So as you're watching this, this is hot off the presses. Now, granted, this is also applicable for other formats that are in the game of Flesh and Blood, but I'm going to talk you over some of the stuff that I typically go through. And let's start by going to this key points. Picking a play style. So what do you like to do? Do you like to play a specific style of, like if you think about this like D&D, do you like to be stealthy and roguelike? Do you like to be the wizard that's blowing stuff up? Do you like to be the barbarian that likes to hack and slash? These are all classes, and maybe they have talents. We'll get to that in a second. So do you want to be simple or complex? How advanced do you want to think about this? Do you want it to run pretty much on autopilot, or do you want it to be a little bit more involved with your mental brain massaging and muscles, as some of our players locally like to talk about? Evaluating your limited card pool. Now, I'm not an extreme expert on this, but I do want to talk a little bit about the limited card pool, because Sage, leveraging in the prior video, talking about your basics, commons, and rares, means that certain card types that are available are omitted from Sage, and you have to think about that. Also, next, that leads us into thinking about the matchups, right? There is kind of a rock, lizard, Spock kind of a thing, rock, paper, scissors, lizard, Spock to this. Not everything is good into every other matchup, but they all can functionally do something. And I want you to think long term. So let's go ahead and jump into the next part of this. All right, so we're going to talk about, first and foremost, what is a class? Now, a class, you'll see at the bottom of these cards, we learned in the last video, if you watch that the heroes all need to be young in order to be in the Sage format. And one of the things we want to talk about here is the class. Now, in this specific image that you're seeing on the screen here, you have Dash Database, which is a mechanologist. That is a class. You have Ira, Crimson Haze, which is a ninja. Then you have Ko. Ko is a Brute, and Dorinthia, which is a warrior. Now, I picked these because, well, one, I like them. Two, I am the most familiar with these four classes of the game. This is not all of the classes. The next couple of things that will show up, we'll talk about, come from some other sources, and I'll link those. There is a website that I can reference you to, fabrary.net, as well as the actual Flesh and Blood website. Those will have some very useful data for you if you want to take a look. All right, what is a class? Now, there are actually 16 classes, with a little bit of a caveat. We're going to kind of go into that here in a second. This is the fabtcg.com/hero selection that's up on the screen. I'm giving some love to Bolton, because I know that there are Bolton fans out there. Bolton is a hero, and you'll see here that they've actually changed this. This is a lot different than it used to be, and I really appreciate that they've done this. But, you know, there is some stuff that's a little bit for me to learn as a person that's been around the game for a while. But from an outside perspective, this is a great way to kind of get a look of the hero, get a little bit of the lore. So in this case, you see that Solana's faithful warrior, Bolton valiantly charges his soul and then releases light back into back-to-back attacks that shine across the field. He's aggressive. He's a combo. There's a difficulty star rating. Living legend points, we're going to not deal with that for right now. That's for the classic constructed format. But this helps you understand who's available in the Sage format, in the living legend format, and the classic constructed format. But this is a good overarching way to see how difficult the hero is to play, what style they are, right? That's kind of a thing that we'll talk about. And I say there's 16 classes, but theoretically in Sage, very specifically, Shapeshifter, Thief, and Bard are not really in Merchant. We're not really kind of, but like these classes exist, but they don't really exist. So that's why I said there's 16 classes. There's actually less than 16 classes, but you'll get to explore those as time goes on. Moving to the next slide. All right. What is a talent? This is a philosophy question, because for a long time there were some debates on what was a talent and what was a class. And in this scenario here, I've put four heroes up here that are both a talented hero. So you'll see here that Fi is a ninja from earlier, but Fi is a draconic ninja. Fi has the draconic talent. Briar's a Runeblade hero who's elemental with the essence of earth and lightning. So Essence was something in an earlier set. I'm not going to get into it, but that is a very unique way of giving additional card pools while being elemental. So there's a whole thing there. Icelander. Somebody you've probably seen, given that it is one of the heroes that was discussed for Silver Age, probably a poster child, actually. Icelander is an elemental wizard hero. So you'll see that it's a wizard and element with the essence of ice. And then Aurora is another essence of lightning in this case, and it is also a Ruin Blade. So I put 2 Ruin Blades up here to show you that even though there is elemental Ruin Blade cards, you could have an elemental Ruin Blade or a Ruin Blade card. They would both be like a Ruin Blade card can be played in Briar and Aurora, but a Earth Ruin Blade card can only be played in Briar and not in Aurora. But a Lightning Ruin Blade card can be played in Aurora and not Briar. A little confusing until you get around it, but for the most part, it is easy to keep track of. So I just wanted to point that out. Again, you can also find these on faburay.net with cards by hero type. And next up on my list, we're going to go ahead and talk about starting with your preferred playstyle. So I play Mechanologist primarily, and Mechanologist, as you've probably seen, is a very steampunky style of class. And what's nice about that is the Mechanologist class, the heroes I've played over time, which has been Dash and then Dash IE or Dash IO, depending on, there's terminologies there. You got Data Doll. These are heroes, and they all have different play styles. Some of them go a lot wider. Some of them go more tall, which is a terminology you've probably not heard of. I mean, if you're in the card sphere, you have, but I'm taking this from the approach of you're new to the game. So again, welcome. Thanks for hanging out and joining. But one of the things to consider is how you're going to go. The game of Flesh and Blood is very different than other games. You start at your highest power level, and then you dwindle down over time, comparatively speaking, to other games, which is typically where you start at nothing and build yourself up to an end state. In this case, it's the reverse. Tempo is another terminology that is leveraged, and that tempo is the back and forth push and pull of how you're going to approach playing the game. And as you build momentum in the game, you could have some really good turns, and then if I were to full block out, basically protect myself from everything you're throwing at me, then I might be able to come back and take that tempo by doing something completely crazy, or just say, nope, I'm going to take everything you're throwing at me, and vice versa. This is the preferred playstyle. Some are going really wide, some are going really tall, some are combo centric, some are build up, do an off and on, kind of like I'm not a big boxer fan, but I've always heard the terminology thrown around of you're gonna sit and take a punch, then you're gonna punch back, and you're gonna take a punch and punch back. So that's kind of how I can look at it. All right, next up, you want to consider simplicity versus complex, and I know my next slide is going to be a tad controversial for some people. But why I want to talk about that is Sage does, again, limit the amount of cards that are available to a hero. So specializations, which could be in some cases legendary or fableds, which are different rarity levels that are not accessible within the game, could change the dynamic of how that hero feels or plays and interacts just a little bit. So just be aware that there could be some combinations of cards that are talked about in other online videos you're seeing that could involve cards of a rarity class that are not available in the game of Sage. So looking at this from a Sage perspective, you want to click select a class or a hero that really kind of resonates with yourself. So this is my simple and complex slide. I have Ira because Ira is a very simple hero ability. Your second attack gets +1 each turn. That's pretty simple to remember. However, Chain, which I played in Monarch, and that was one of my first sets, and I'll tell you, that was a very complicated learning experience. Chain says, once per turn action, create a Soul Shackle token. Your next Ruin Blade or Shadow action this turn gains Go Again, Go Again. If you don't know what all that means, it can be a little confusing. However, the hero ability, which is stapled to that hero on the card, really is what shines and differentiates between having a very simple hero like Ira and a very complex hero like Chain. Roast me in the comments below. Next up, we're going to talk about consistency within the limited card pools. Now, I'm going to have a couple of slides that are going to show here a little bit of data from February that's coming up next. And I just want to point this out. It's not to say don't try a class, because one of the last slides I have will be a very good message for everyone. But I do want to point out that not all classes are created equally, and not all classes have access to the same amount of cards. So just be aware. This is an example of cards from February that are by class. And specifically here, we can look at the heroes across the bottom and the total number of cards that are allowable to be played with those heroes in the in basically the class section. Now, I know that not all these are young heroes. I could not find a way to specifically say show me Sage only. But, for example, for those of you that don't know, I'm going to attempt to do this with the baby cat because the baby cat just nerfed my video screen. But in a class, when you take a look here, the classes have a specific number of cards available. So an example here, Aurora has around 150 available cards that is in the class Runeblade, because that is the class that Aurora is. And now if we go to the next slide, we can look at Talented. So picking on Aurora again, very first one, you'll see that they have between 60 and 80 cards, so probably another 70, right? But there are other heroes that, like Betsy, do not have that, so they don't have access to that. But when you combine everything together, you'll notice that the combined Aurora cards, which is the Runeblade and Talent, is right around 225, but then Betsy has maybe 250, right? They're within a margin of each other, but this just shows that there's a layering within each of these. So you just want to think about, so when you select your class or hero, that the card pool will be a little bit different. Also, this was not filtered based on having access to Majestics, Legendaries, Fables. Again, this number is not exactly right. I used to be able to do a little bit more filtering, but as an example, that's where we're at. All right, next up, we're going to talk about matchup spreads and thinking about it not from a perspective of like maybe just exclusively power. Sage, the format is brand new. It is going to really kick off with the new decks that are coming out, which are going to be the Sage pre-constructed decks, which are apparently going to be straight out of the box competitive decks. So this probably means, and we're going to know relatively soon, right? It's early in January. I think by the end of January, we'll know all the cards. That's what I'm thinking I was told somewhere. We're going to know if those pre-constructed decks contain a bulk of the newer Sage cards, or if, the Compendium of Wraith cards, or if they're going to be a mix of old and new. It'll be real interesting to see where that comes out. But matchups, may not necessarily be the best deck, and there are going to be certain counters. As an example, my Mechanologist Puffin, the one that I've been playing a lot of, has a really hard time in to go wide decks because it is really hard for me to go against a Fi or a Katsu or an Ira who just can outvalue me in a couple turns. So I have to really try to go super tall and do some devastating attacks. But if I can't race them, then I'm out of the game. So just as a heads up, that's something to consider. Thinking about the matchups and picking what kind of works depending on if you get into second cycle, which is a game terminology here where you've gone through your deck. You can think about things like that second playthrough, how you've stacked those cards up to be able to play and get that little incremental amount of value out of it. All right, the next thing here is you want to pick a class that you want to pick long-term. I fell in love with Mechanologist, and that was because I fell in love with Mechanologist because, honestly, the lore and the steampunk aesthetic really resonates with me. So, to me, that was a slam dunk. Ninjas were a close second for mine. I really enjoy the ninja class. I really like the idea of the whole, ninja archetype. In a lot of other games I've played, and then Warrior was like a close third, and then Brute was my close fourth. That's why in that first slide I picked those, because those are the classes that I'm most familiar with. For somebody else, like a buddy of mine that I know is Matt, he really enjoys Wizards, and I think he's had that'd probably be one of his top classes. Again, everybody has a flavor of what they like to do, and again, that play style that's associated with it will dictate kind of some of the other pieces. So just be aware that different classes will act differently in Sage than they will in a more longer format with access to different cards that are omitted from the format here. So, all right, we're going to talk about the bonus, picking a hero within a class. Now, I know that I've bounced back and forth between the class and the hero. Think of the class as being good at a subject, and think of the hero as being the item within that subject that you are the expert in. One of the things you can think about is, I would say, clear, repeatable game plans. And I know that may come across as odd, but if you are wanting something that's more power spiky, you might try to throw something that's going to, have these really big, like a Guardian or something like that. But you have to still understand that there are cards in the pools that are not going to be accessible. You might have to do attack pressure or disruption. Again, you're only using commons and rares, so that's why I talk about that. I do want to talk about looking for heroes that function without legendaries. Now, legendaries, again, is another rarity, but when you start talking about CC decks where you have access to everything, almost every piece in the equipment suite, minus a couple of exceptions in Mechanologist, as an example, I use a common leg piece, but you're going to see that a lot of these decks lean on the legendaries because those are the strongest cards. And Sage prioritizes the lower rarity, rare and common. And with the new Companion of Wraith coming out, there is a better than zero chance that we're going to get a lot of cool new pieces of equipment that will mix things up. And so that's why I wanted to talk a little bit about that. Now, you can also really look at matching the hero to your preferred playstyle. And that really, again, boils down to, do you want to be counterplay, mid-range, disruptive? Do you want to look for combo wombo kind of stuff? Do you just want to just play jank? I like jank stuff. So, but that's something to consider. Now, you also want to evaluate the strengths within a smaller meta. And right now, meta is a term that I throw around loosely because we're in season 0, pre-season. Everything that's out there is going to be completely mixed up with the amount of cards that are released in this new set. But you want to kind of think about the matchups, and if you have an auto lose type of match versus an auto win type of match, they're not as common, I don't think, anymore, but there are certain classes that are very much, you have to be an expert in order to really come out on top when you have a certain hero class match another hero class. And it's not because they are just impossible, but you just have to eke out every ounce of extra, to that finish line that otherwise sometimes would not come as, or would come easier to other classes. So just think about that. Also, pick a hero that you want to master and not just win with. And that's why I picked Mechanologist. If you really focus on some of the fundamentals, the sequencing, how to play stuff, when to play a card, when to block with a card, when to use that card to do other aspects, I think it will help a lot. And all the data that you're gathering here in Sage will transition to the classic constructed format or the UPF format if you really want to go play UPF. So that's kind of nice. And finally, this is the most important side of this whole thing. Use the rule of cool. I don't know who actually said this. I think Dice Command was the last person I heard this, but frankly, it is worth saying again. If you like a certain hero or an archetype or a combat style, play it. Don't let anybody talk you out of it. It's super, super awesome to have things that you like. I like Mechanologist, so I'm going to play Mechanologist until the day I die, because I just really like Mechanologist. So, again, if you like it, play it. And thanks very much. So that's pretty much everything in a nutshell for what I'd say on trying to pick a hero. If you had to pick a class, is there a class that you saw that piques your interest? Also, if there's a hero that you know about, go ahead and let me know in the comments below. I'd love to know what you're going to play, and if you have a couple, if you're wishy-washy between, start chatting about it. We'll help you figure it out, or if you have any questions, join my Discord. We'll talk with you. There's plenty of people out there that are willing to help. So, again, until next time, may your games be fun and your friendships grow. Cheers, and thank you. See you on the next one. These are classes. So if I were to look at Aurora, Aurora has right at 150 available. This cat just turned off my green screen and made me big. Bro. My dude, I love you, but we can't keep doing this. That's the whole point. The whole point of me doing all of these things is